To them, this was a survival situation. To me, I'm just trying to save $475. Have you ever had some small, cheap object that somehow becomes valuable? And in this case, it was a cheap little 99-cent tire gauge that ended up being worth $475. I had a previous Dodge pickup to the big black one I've got now. I had a silver one, and I had built it up in a similar way, you know, big tires and a winch. I had a camper on the back. It was my first Overlander. And I was very excited to have taken it down to St. George Island in Florida, just south of Apalachicola. It's a beautiful part of the state, great part of the country, kind of old Florida, no big condos and mini golf, just old beaches, that sort of thing. And I was very excited because there is a state park there. And in that state park, you can get a four-wheel drive permit and drive out on roads that other people don't normally get to drive on. And, you know, it's always exciting to do anything, kind of coloring out of the lines. So the rule was you had to have a four-wheel drive vehicle, and of course I did, and I was very proud of that, very excited about that. The condition, however, was that once you went past this certain point, there was a state park, there was a line, there used to be a road where you could drive out to this point, but one of the hurricanes had come through and destroyed it, and rather than repairing the road, they just put up a gate and said, if you got a four-wheel drive, you can go the next, I don't know, 3 or 4 miles. So I was very excited, had my fishing poles, had some stuff, had a couple of friends with me, my wife, so we go out there, I get the permit, sign the thing, and the rule was, though, you had to be out by 10 o'clock. They had a tow service in town that had some sort of an off-road tow truck, and if you were not back to the gate by 10 o'clock, then they would send him out to get you, and it was $475. It did not matter if you were asleep or stuck or broken down or whatever. If you're not at this gate, you're going to pay the $475. I'm like, hey, no problem. It's 5 in the afternoon. I got plenty of time. I'm like, no problem. I don't ever get stuck. You know, get through the gate, and immediately it's just big, washed out sand roads and a little bit of sand dunes, and it's fun. I'd never really got to drive in sand a whole lot before, so I'm excited. I'm bouncing over sand dunes and swinging the truck around, having a great time. And there's a few places where some kind of dunes had formed, and, you know, I did not have extraordinarily large tires on the truck, so you had to kind of keep your speed up to stay on top of it. And I'm, you know, cresting a few of these, get a little bit of air, but the soft sand's all squishy, so I'm having a great time. So bounce and jump the truck, you know, a few times got it a little too high, came down a little hard, no problem. This truck I had at the time, I used it to travel all over the United States. I did off-roading with it, I went camping with it, I took it in the snow, I drove it on the highways. It went to just about every state in the lower 48. To me, tires are perhaps the most important modification on a car, because everything you do, no matter how good your brakes are, how good your suspension may be, how powerful your engine, it all has to be translated to the ground through that one little tire, that little contact patch on the tire. So rather than having different vehicles for everything, I just had different sets of tires for this truck that I swapped on, just like, you know, a lady might have different sets of shoes. So I had mud tires, I had road tires, I had off-road tires. And in this particular case, knowing I was going to drive in the sand, I had just some all-terrain tires, some BFG all-terrains, I believe, I can't remember. But, you know, the thing about an all-terrain tire is it doesn't have a big, thick tread block. It's not a big, aggressive tire. And as extreme as an environment off-road you think sand or snow might be, a really aggressive, knobby tire tends to dig and thus displace the sand. The truck starts to sink. You want a tire that's going to float on top of the sand, not to disrupt that surface too much. So I went with some all-terrain tires, which, you know, in the photos don't look like the most ideal tires to take off-road in the sand. They actually worked brilliantly, and I had a lot of confidence taking out there, and I'd done a little bit of sand driving before, but this is that North Florida panhandle, just that sugary, powdered sugar kind of sand that you're going to sink in no matter what. But they were doing really, really well, and the truck was just sailing along the sand, and I was having a little bit too much fun, hitting ruts, bouncing a couple of dunes, and you know, got a little air into the tires a few times, and of course landing in that sand kind of cushions the blow. So I was just having a great time, living out all of my Ironman Stewart Baja fantasies as I went. I get out to a point, you know, to the end of the point there, parked the truck, went fishing, had a good time. My friends hiked around, just had a big time. Starts getting dark. Okay, time to go home. Turn the truck around, and the first sand dune I got to, the truck just immediately just sunk to the frame. I was like, well, that's weird. I did pretty good coming in here. So I got out the shovel and the sand ladders, which if you run the black truck, those are big perforated panels. You stick those under the tires, kind of get the truck something to get up on top of. So I put the sand ladders under the tires and drive out of the sand and get a truck length, and it gets stuck again. There's no such thing as directional sand. How did I drive over it this way and can't get out of it the other direction? So the second stuck, I'm getting out the shovel and I look and I notice that only my rear tires are spinning in the sand. The front tires are not doing anything. And I was in 4-wheel drive, and I'm a truck guy. I worked on trucks for years. I did not hear a ring gear break. I did not hear a U-joint go. I didn't break a hub. Nothing loud happened. When 4-wheel drive parts break, especially under use, you tend to know it. Nothing happened. So I was like, man, it must not be engaged in 4-wheel drive. So I get in the truck, and sure enough, it's in 4-wheel drive, and I try 4 high, 4 low. I just cannot get those front tires to spin. Using my powers of deductive reasoning, it must be the vacuum coupler, which that axle in that particular truck has this little vacuum coupler. It sides a sleeve. You got 4-wheel drive. So the truck is, of course, stuck to the frame. I can't get to this necessarily. So I break out the shovel, and like the guys in The Great Escape, I start tunneling under this truck. Thankfully, it's Florida sand, so it's real easy. So I'm tunneling under, and I get under there. Of course, the exhaust is hot, and I'm kind of skimming about it. So I finally get to the transfer case, and nothing's broken, nothing's leaking. I start following the vacuum line, and it had sort of a rubber line to the frame, and there was a hard line that went down the frame rail and eventually went to another rubber line to the axle. I discovered that at some point I had hit, I guess, one of these jumps. I had hit the sand dune so hard that the catalytic converter on that truck, which has like there's like a press weld around the edge, kind of a little seam, must have like taken a hit, and it shifted, and it just karate chopped that hard vacuum line on the frame rail just right in half. So I've got no vacuum going to the front axle, no 4-wheel drive. When you're in sand or snow or something like that, the tires have to be turning under their own power to stay on top of the surface. At any point they're not powered, they start to just push sand, they cause resistance, back wheels start to dig, and you become stuck. So definitely have to have 4-wheel drive here. I had already aired the tires down significantly. People suggest do that, and I had done that. I'd aired them down to probably 15 psi. I didn't want to go any lower because I would risk popping a tire off the bead, so couldn't go any more in the air pressure. So I've got to fix this 4-wheel drive. Time wise, it's probably 9 o'clock at this point. 10 o'clock's coming up quickly. My wife's reminded me that, this is going to cost you $475, big shot, because you wanted to drive back here. So I'm starting working on the truck. Now, my 2 friends that were with me, they weren't outdoorsmen. They were not used to being out in the wilderness, in their mind anyway. We are 2 miles from town. There's a campground 3 miles up the beach. So they're getting a little nervous. And, they start thinking, what are we going to do? We're going to get stuck out here all night. What's going to happen? And, this is August in Florida. It's not cold. It's not all that hot at night. We've got a truck with a camper on the back. I've got gallons of water. We've got food. We've got cell service. We're okay. We're going to be all right. They were actually so worried, they suggested maybe walking out. And I was like, well, okay, sure. But we're worried about getting lost. And if you know St. George Island, so just like most barrier islands, just a very narrow strip of land. There's a little intercoastal there to get to the shore. The Gulf's on the other side, but it's only about 2 footballs wide. And we are at the end of it, and the gate is full width of the island at the other end, a few miles ahead. And they're like, well, what if we get lost? And I was like, okay, look, you guys just start walking west. If you don't get wet, you're going to get to the gate. You're either going to pass me, get in the water, or get to the gate. So just you'll be fine. So I gave them some granola bars and some water, and they literally, to them, this was a survival situation. To me, I'm just trying to save $475. So they start walking, and I start looking at this vacuum line, like, what am I going to do? So, tape's not really going to hold up. It's not going to work well. But then that little proverbial light bulb pops up. I go on my console, and I get that tiny little tire gauge, and I get out my hacksaw out of my toolkit, and I cut the ends off the tire gauge. And sure enough, it's just about exactly the same diameter as that 1/4-inch vacuum line. So I dig back under the truck again, get up underneath there, and kind of hacksaw out the crimp bits and sleeve that little, slide it on one end, slide it back, tape it up on the ends, and crank it up. Sure enough, I've got vacuum. Drives the truck back on top of the sand. Drive it all the way out, and again, have a great time bounce. I'm racing the clock at this point, though. It is 15 minutes to 10 o'clock. I am so close. So I'm just bouncing and bashing, just racing the clock, trying to get there. I get to the gate right as my friends are, and made it with 2 minutes to spare. They are tired. They're covered in sand. They got in some bushes at some point, trying to make a shortcut. They're all cut up. They've already drank their water and eat their granola bars. They thought they were going to die. As my wife at the time, I knew better than to say, I told you so, but I couldn't resist just saying, see, we made it. The tire gauge worked. And she looked over and she said, that was a creative solution for a problem that should have never existed in the first place.